Coming up on Arirang News, the coronavirus in China has now claimed some 130 lives and infected more than 6,000 people, according to official figures. It's also spread to 17 countries or territories, prompting them to restrict travel. South Korean companies are taking measures to protect their employees, flying them back home from China and canceling business trips to the country. And the U.S. military tells its Korean employees that they might not get paid in a couple of months' time because it hasn't reached an agreement yet with Seoul on how to share the costs of South Korea's defense. It's 4:00 p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. Alarming new numbers out of China overnight. Cases of the new coronavirus there are now skyrocketing. And to try to contain the virus, China has reportedly agreed to bring in international experts. Kim Jae-hee has our top story.
The new type of coronavirus that first appeared in Wuhan late last month continues to claim more victims. As of Wednesday morning, more than 130 people have died in China, and more than 100 of them are from Wuhan. The number of confirmed cases in China has soared to around 6,000 as well. Experts in China say the outbreak is forecast to worsen. The head of a team of experts at China's National Health Commission said on Tuesday that the coronavirus will reach its peak infection rate in 7 to 10 days. Amid the growing concerns, the World Health Organization said on Tuesday that China agreed to permit teams of international experts to visit China to help research and contain the outbreak. The news came after the Director General of the WHO met with the Chinese president in Beijing the same day to discuss plans to contain the novel coronavirus. Chinese President Xi Jinping has also expressed confidence that China will win the battle against what he called the demon coronavirus outbreak engulfing the world. He projected an image of confidence and capability, saying his country can win its battle against a new coronavirus outbreak.
The Chinese government attaches great importance because the purpose of the government is to put the lives and health of the people at the top of all priorities. Therefore, I have been personally directing and deploying the epidemic prevention and containment work this time. I believe that as long as we strengthen our confidence, help each other, adopt scientific prevention and containment measures, and persist in precise policies, we will definitely win the battle against the outbreak.
Welcoming the engagement of the international organization, he added that he hopes to cooperate fully with the WHO to safeguard public health. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
The United States is warning its citizens not to travel to China, and it's even considering a ban on flights to the country. The number of infections in other countries is rising quickly as well. Choi Jung-yoon reports.
The world is on edge as the novel coronavirus breaches more national borders, and governments are taking tough countermeasures to protect their nationals. At least 18 countries and territorial entities outside mainland China have now reported confirmed cases. The epidemic is spreading fast internationally, with the United Arab Emirates seeing its first confirmed case. Although the exact number of infected persons in the Middle East remains uncertain, the family from Wuhan is the first confirmed case in the region. With the most confirmed patients outside of China, Thailand's number of confirmed cases now stand at 14. Bangkok has unveiled plans to screen all arrivals from China for symptoms of the coronavirus. Hong Kong has at least 8 confirmed cases and announced plans on Tuesday to restrict cross-border travel between the city and mainland China. The deadly virus is also hitting Europe. France on Tuesday confirmed its 4th case in an elderly Chinese tourist. France's health ministry said the patient, who is hospitalized in Paris, is about 80 years old and gravely ill. Concerns are spiking as the possibility of human-to-human transmission of the virus is becoming more and more of a likelihood. Japan and Germany have both confirmed cases in patients who have never been to Wuhan, the epicenter of the virus. Japan has at least 7 confirmed cases, and the first confirmed patient, a male bus driver in his 60s, has never visited Wuhan, but drove 2 groups of Chinese tourists from Wuhan earlier this month. Germany is up to at least 4 confirmed patients. And the country's first confirmed patient, a 33-year-old German male, did not visit China but was in a meeting with a Chinese female, who later turned out to be infected. The virus has also spread to North America. Canada has confirmed its 3rd case in a man in his 40s who visited Wuhan. In the U.S., at least 5 people have been diagnosed with the coronavirus, all of whom recently traveled to the Chinese city. As a countermeasure, White House officials say they are considering suspending flights to and from China and has issued a level 4 warning against traveling to Wuhan, as well as warning people to avoid non-essential travel to any part of China. The U.S. also wants Beijing to be more transparent.
We are urging China. More cooperation and transparency are the most important steps you can take toward a more effective response. Beyond that, all options for dealing with infectious disease spread have to be on the table, including travel restrictions.
The U.S. also said it will expand screening of travelers arriving from Wuhan to 20 airports and land crossings, points of entry that account for up to 90% of incoming visitors from China. 최정윤, Arirang News.
And the South Korean government will soon be sending chartered planes to bring back its nationals stuck in Wuhan. And for those who turn out to be infected, the government says it's going to cover all the costs for their treatment. Our Shin Se-min has more.
All treatment expenses for patients with coronavirus will be covered by the South Korean government. That includes costs associated with isolating patients, screening suspected cases, and treating those infected. The health ministry said all expenses will be split between the state, the National Health Insurance Service, and local governments. As for bringing Koreans home from the Chinese city of Wuhan, currently under complete lockdown, the Korean government is flying in 4 chartered flights over the next 2 days. That means some 700 Koreans, even those who may be showing symptoms of the virus, will be brought back home.
We plan to arrange seating by separating those showing symptoms and those who aren't in different flights or different levels of the plane in order to avoid cross-infection.
The foreign ministry said the decision is part of the government's responsibility to protect the lives and the safety of Korean nationals, no matter where they are. Preparations are also in place for when those people arrive in Korea. They'll go through a detailed inspection and will also be monitored in an isolated facility. At Incheon International Airport, an additional 200 people, including airport police and airport corporation personnel, have been put in to help ease the screening and quarantine process of all entrants from China. And a full-scale inspection began Tuesday on all 3,000 people who've entered the country from Wuhan between January 13th and the 23rd, in view of the virus's incubation period of up to 2 weeks. Blue House said the government will do thorough health checks on all such people, regardless of whether or not they've been showing symptoms. As of 9 a.m. Tuesday, a total of 4 confirmed cases of coronavirus had been reported, and the government had raised the alert level for infectious disease to the 2nd most severe level. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa has asked China to help keep the South Koreans in Wuhan safe. Speaking to her Chinese counterpart, Wang Yi, on the phone late Tuesday, Kang said she hopes China will be able to quickly get the situation under control. She also promised support from the South Korean government. The Chinese foreign minister pledged to protect South Koreans and agreed to work closely with the South Korean government. They talked about other issues as well, such as coordinating for a summit, with Chinese President Xi Jinping expected to visit South Korea this year. Meanwhile, South Korea's defense ministry is preemptively quarantining more than 100 troops who've recently been to China and taking other steps to contain the virus. The ministry said as of Tuesday evening, an estimated 150 soldiers have visited China since January 6th. Among them, 124 have been quarantined either at home or in separate areas of their bases, even if they don't show any symptoms. Around 100 soldiers and medics have already been mobilized to major checkpoints across the country to support the government's quarantine efforts. And North Korea is stepping up its efforts against the coronavirus. It's not yet reported any infections, but the North's propaganda service, Naenara, said Tuesday that Pyongyang has declared a national emergency. It said the regime is working to keep the virus from getting in. The Nodong Shinmun, a state-run newspaper, also said the North is taking emergency measures and stepping up quarantine measures. In other news, the U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, John Rood, says he supports the idea of Washington and Pyongyang issuing a declaration of peace. He told the House Armed Services Committee on Tuesday that for North Korea to not be economically isolated, it should get back to the nuclear talks. The senior American official said the North is still a security threat to the U.S., South Korea, and Japan. He added that the Seoul-Washington alliance is important in dealing with the issue. South Korea's top nuclear envoy, Lee Do-hoon, is heading to Europe today to meet with senior EU officials and discuss Korean Peninsula issues. He will spend Wednesday and Thursday in Brussels, meeting with members of the EU Political and Security Committee. He'll also talk with the head of the European External Action Service. From Thursday to Saturday, he will be in Berlin to meet with senior German officials. His trip comes as Seoul tries to help restart the North Korea-U.S. nuclear talks. South Korean companies are canceling business trips to China and bringing back their workers. Concerns are also growing over how the virus will affect the local markets. Lee Seung-jae reports.
Thermal imaging cameras are a new addition to the first-floor lobby of this major corporation in South Korea. They detect the body temperature of employees and others going in and out of the building. With the new coronavirus on many people's minds, companies are springing into action. Their first major task is to withdraw any South Koreans working in Wuhan, the Chinese city at the epicenter of the virus. Companies are also either limiting or completely halting business trips to China.
LG Electronics has halted all business trips to not only Wuhan, but the whole of China. We've been limiting business trips to Wuhan since the middle of the month. But as the situation worsened, we've ramped up measures.
In the case of Hyundai Motor, if families of workers in China request they return, the automaker is paying all the necessary travel expenses to bring them home. In order to prevent the further spread of the virus, most commercial banks are mandating that their tellers wear face masks. Also, government guidelines have been issued for domestic airline cabin crew members to wear masks on all routes. As the coronavirus could impact export and import demand, the government is also unveiling measures to lessen the impact of any potential problems that may pop up. But as South Korea faces the same uncertainties as other countries with confirmed cases, both the public and private sectors are already trying to look 2 and 3 steps ahead, especially if the crisis worsens. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Kim Young-han, Professor of Economics at Sungkyunkwan University. Professor Kim, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So uncertainty is growing, of course, because of the spread of the coronavirus. Wall Street stocks, though, bouncing back overnight by over 1%. Looks like that sent Korean stocks higher today as well. Take us through the markets today.
Yes, it's true that the global stock market has been rebounded after such a kind of sharp drop in the previous days. But when you consider the general development of the whole economy and also the policy approach to control the coronavirus, we cannot really observe real positive material sign that the situation is really getting better. So in considering all those backgrounds, we might interpret this rebound as just a kind of technical rebound after a rather sharp drop in the previous days. But it's true that there is some criticism that the latest response in the market is a somewhat exaggerated negative exaggeration of the possible damage of the economic damage of the coronavirus. But still, the kind of developing situation seems to be somewhat out of our expectations. So although we cannot really provide any solid, concrete prediction for the market development, I think so we should be prepared for all possible kind of development, the worst case and the somewhat positive kind of upturn.
So likely a bounce back based on technical factors rather than substantial change in the situation. But Korean businesses are nervous about this coronavirus situation. Those with business in China are taking emergency measures to protect their staff. How is this affecting Korean businesses, and what will happen to them if this outbreak drags on?
Well, already I would say the Korean industry, especially in the tourism industry and retail industry, is suffering some negative shock caused by the coronavirus. And as you mentioned, if this kind of situation is not controlled in short term and all the negative shock is getting more elevated to expanded kind of emergencies, I think we might think about much more kind of a bigger size of negative shock, even including the negative shock in Korean firms' production capacity, since majority of the Korean conglomerates has their major production facilities located in China. So currently, say at this kind of stage, and the short-term effect will be somewhat limited to the tourism and the tourism-related industries and retail industry. But if this situation cannot be controlled in short term, yes, I think we should be prepared for real massive scale of negative shock, even for a kind of big negative shock in production capacity of the Korean kind of conglomerates. So I think this is another big lesson that we should take new approach in terms of locating our production facilities and other corporate facilities. Currently, we might say all major Korean firms are too heavily located in China, so this has been a good chance for Korean firms to kind of take a new approach in global business.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's hard to tell how this is going to end up, though tourism certainly in the short term will suffer. But South Korea's consumer sentiment, in other news, we see it's up this month by the most in 4 months, now well into positive territory. What do you see in those numbers, and what's your outlook in the near term?
Yes, it's true that the number itself, this consumer kind of sentiment index, has been increased to 104.2. So that's definitely a good sign. But that's just a kind of sentiment index, not really followed by the positive upturn of the consumer consumption. So, well, again, I think we should not exaggerate these changes in consumer sentiment index. This sentiment index might play some role in predicting the real changes in the consumers' behavior in their domestic consumption. But till now, we cannot observe any real kind of sign for the upturn of the consumer consumption, domestic consumption. So instead of being excited by this change of the index, I think Korean government should make more efforts to provide a real positive kind of inputs, not just in kind of massive increase of the massive money supply, but also in more organized efforts to boost up the general economic activities, definitely starting from more organized efforts to boost up the Korean industrial competitiveness.
All right, Professor Kim, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thank you for sharing your insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, the U.S. seems to be raising the pressure on South Korea to pay more to have American troops on the peninsula. It's warned South Koreans working for U.S. Forces Korea that they might be put on unpaid leave starting in April because the allies haven't yet reached a deal on sharing defense costs. Kim Ji-yeon has more.
The U.S. Forces Korea has issued a 60-day notice of a potential furlough to its South Korean employees, citing the lapse in the defense cost-sharing agreement between the two countries. In a statement, the USFK said the move is due to the allies' failure to hammer out a revised special measures agreement, and the notice is being provided 2 months in advance of the furlough date as required by U.S. law. The statement adds that USFK greatly values its near 9,000-strong workforce of South Koreans and their contributions, but without an agreed-upon SMA, it has to prepare for a potential furlough. It adds that all the workers have already received notification letters or will do so by Friday at the latest. The move is also being viewed as a means to gain the upper hand in defense cost-sharing negotiations, in which the two sides have failed to reach a compromise during 6 rounds of talks held since September of last year. Democratic chairman of the U.S. House Armed Services Committee, Representative Adam Smith, in a hearing Tuesday, said he's concerned about the possibility of relations worsening between the two allies, following continued U.S. demands for a maximum 5-fold increase of Seoul's contribution to defense cost sharing, up from last year's $870 million. Smith added the U.S. gains a lot from its alliance with South Korea and is vital to maintain friendly ties for the maintenance of regional peace. He also stressed that U.S. troops stationed in South Korea are not merely there to protect South Korea. Seoul's foreign ministry has said it's preparing to reach a compromise by February, with local media outlets expecting Seoul's independent dispatch of troops to the Strait of Hormuz to be taken into account in a potential compromise. The U.S. is believed to have asked for Seoul's contribution in costs associated to the U.S. troops assigned to the USFK on a rotational basis of 9 months, as well as offshore costs for the training of U.S. troops not limited to those on the peninsula. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The UK has decided not to ban equipment made by the Chinese telecom giant Huawei in building its new 5G network, even though it's been under pressure to do so from the U.S. The British government, though, is excluding Huawei's products from the sensitive network cores where data is processed. For the non-sensitive parts, Huawei products will be capped at 35%. The Trump administration said it's disappointed with Britain's decision. Washington has banned Huawei from the rollout of its 5G network, saying China could use it to steal secrets. Facebook has released a new tool that'll show its users how the company's been using the data it collects on their internet browsing. It also gives users more control over how Facebook tracks them. Our Ji-yeon has more.
Facebook has launched a long-promised tool that gives users more control over how the social network traces their activity across the web. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced in a blog post on Tuesday local time that a new tool dubbed Off Facebook Activity is available globally to its 2 billion members. This new section in the settings shows users the latest 180 days of data that Facebook has collected and shared with organizations and advertisers. The tracker shows users their browsing history and gives them the list of websites, apps, and stores that Facebook knows they visited even when they are off Facebook. The tool lets users clear their browsing history and allows them to request Facebook to stop tracking their history. Facebook has been using information from third-party apps and websites to cater ads customized to people's interests. Facebook's move is part of efforts to expand its privacy protection following the 2018 Cambridge Analytica scandal, where the social networking giant was criticized as millions of people's Facebook profiles were used for political advertising purposes without their consent. According to the Washington Post, Facebook spokesman Jay Nancaro emphasized the importance of helping people understand why they are seeing the ads they see and providing people with control over how their data is being used. With this tool, users will still see ads on Facebook but have less chance of seeing the products that they were looking at on a different site. Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.